Hey ZJ, the Silent Hill 2 remake, a AAA game you were actually excited for, is getting great reviews. Are you gonna buy it? No. Strangely, all the games I care about decided to come out as I'm budgeting for an upcoming vacation. And being cursed with an Ebenezer Scrooge approach to finances, I must wait for Black Friday to get all the games I need. So this week, I have to play the Silent Hill 2 we have at home. Wait a minute, I never got around to Crow Country from earlier this year. Well, it is October, so I don't see a reason not to. Crow Country is an indie survival horror game stylized like an N64 game. No, not a PS1 game. Yes, there is a difference. As of late, I've actually been 3D modeling a lot of things in an N64 style simply because it's rare enough to stand out, yet easy enough for a low-skill artist like myself. Did you notice that the recent thumbnails were in this style? You play as Mara, a young cop who is going to investigate a defunct amusement park called Crow Country just outside Atlanta. I had another notch on the belt for a horror game taking place in Georgia. There's not much of an initial premise for why you're doing what you're doing. That's explained to you later. Normally, I'd say that's a bad, terrible thing. That's usually one of the biggest turnoffs in any video game, but Crow Country actually does something that really impresses me. Not only does the game grip you with an environment that's just begging to be explored, but the game progresses like an old school Resident Evil game. It doesn't take long to find a figurative big row of locked doors with figurative big keyholes, and you'll soon find your first puzzle, after which you receive a rather odd-shaped figurative key to open a figurative door with and continue. I didn't want to describe it as a Metroidvania because some people get really fussy when you describe the original RE as such, but it progresses very similar to one. And pretty much every puzzle is fun to some degree. There's really only one that I encountered where I was genuinely annoyed, and upon research, so was everybody else. There's also the occasional, how the heck was I supposed to know I needed to shoot the statue's head before I poured acid on it? Congratulations, I saved you 10 minutes. And while most of the puzzles have a rather large degree of moon logic, it wasn't insane, plus there are a lot of notes plastered throughout the park that offer guidance without sounding like an IGN walkthrough. Rather than simply putting the codes to safes on papers next to them, Crow Country adds some subtlety. I was appalled at how the game was able to get my autistic mind to understand what to do next without spelling it out explicitly. It does this by giving you hints to puzzles long before they happen, or the aforementioned oddly shaped keyholes. There are some notes that flat out tell you where to go, plus this fortune teller for more specific hints, but all in all, if you pay attention to your surroundings as you explore, you'll be hooked through the majority of the game. Even when I got stuck, looking through the notes that I found for clues like a detective putting all their evidence together was really fun. Heck, it wasn't until after an hour that I found out my character was here due to a missing persons report. And it just works, because it wasn't my character's motivation that was hooking me, it was my own. The puzzles are the clear highlight of the game, which is great because the combat... oh boy. Well, for one, movement feels fine. The game graciously allows for both modern and tank controls. As somebody who thinks the best way to play RE5 is with tank controls, I never once used them, but I love the option. But aiming resembles... Resident Evil 4? Combat revolves around accuracy and getting headshots with what little ammo you have, something that just does not work from this camera angle. Not to mention, your starting handgun is poo-doo and you don't get a melee attack. The latter point is for understandable reasons, but I still don't like it. Now, you don't need to kill enemies, the game even says so, but while enemies don't respawn, new ones spawn as you progress, which can lead to rather crowded areas. This works in a horror sense, but I think the RE makes establish that you don't need your combat to be sucky to manage a scare. And then there's the fact that bullets are required for some puzzles, which was just a huge oversight. Thankfully, the game wraps up at about the 5-hour mark, making it easy to forgive the lackluster combat, and if it matters that much to you, there is an easier difficulty so you can focus on puzzles and exploration. Last point to bring up is the art style. I really dig the low poly environment, and the enemies are modeled pretty well. I can't say there was a single one that didn't make me uneasy on some level. They're not crazy terrifying. I think Half-Life's aliens managed to be much scarier, but they did make me feel incredibly stressed whenever they were around, especially when I had little ammo. And thankfully, the game is light on jump scares and relies more on its creepy atmosphere and enemies. On a scale of Hello Neighbor to PT, I'd say this is a solid Resident Evil 1 director's cut. Maybe I'm not one to talk though. I saw Alien this weekend, was bored out of my mind by it. Take that as you will. But style-wise, my biggest problem is easily the human models, which seem wildly out of place. They're just so kiddie and don't fit the environment at all. That might be a quote-unquote stylistic choice, but every time I found one of these LEGO Duplo rejects, it just felt off, especially after one started cussing like he wasn't catching up. I think the problem is that these characters have too many polygons for a low polygon world. Their limbs and features are all so well rounded, which is just at odds with the rest of the game. Get what I mean? I do love the style in the end. I mean, I have to, otherwise my 3D modeling business is in the toilet. It very much helps the game stand out in today's indie horror scene. And overall, I very much enjoyed Crow Country. It has fun puzzles and secrets in a spooky environment with icky monsters everywhere. It can use a bit of work on the combat side, but all in all, it's a true indie horror gem. I'll give it Nintendo 64 stars out of 5. Great, are you gonna review Fear the Spotlight now? What? Fear the Spotlight? It was that PS1 style horror game that Blumhouse is publishing. It comes out next week. Ah, frick.